constantly hear the refrain that young people don't care about civil dialogue and don't want to hear opposing viewpoints, that they'll even resort to violence to cancel it out. But what if that's only part of the story? Today's Gen Z guest found himself at the center of a major free speech battle while leading the nation's largest Turning Point USA high school club in Albemarle County. And he gives us a different perspective, one that challenges the common stereotypes about Gen Z and gives us hope about how we can reach them on the major issues our state faces, like the abortion amendment. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candi Cushman, with our special guest, Noah Coffin. Well, welcome, everybody. Glad to have you back for another episode of Speak Up Virginia. And I'm especially excited about this one because we have a special guest, Gen Z representative. If you don't mind being kind of tagged that way, Noah Coffin. Thanks for joining us, Noah.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a blast.
I'm excited to have you on because we have our intern program going on, and I think this is a great time to kind of address what your generation is thinking and maybe how it will shape the future of our nation a little bit later. But before we get into all that, let's just jump right in to kind of why I invited you on the show as a really good representative of Gen Z, because you've been a really great leader and you have led the largest Turning Point USA high school chapter in the nation, which happens to be right here in our state in Albemarle County.
Yes, right here in liberal Albemarle County. It's shocking.
How did you end up becoming leader of that? I know you've already graduated, but how did you end up leading that?
Look, I grew up in a very small Christian private school. I was very encouraged to have conversations about controversial topics that we disagreed with. And it started off uncomfortable at the time, but that was one of the greatest experiences of my life and such a cornerstone in building up my character. And as I went into public high school, what I noticed very quickly was that political discussion of any time was almost taboo. You hear a lot about culture wars in high school. There really wasn't a culture war at my school. It was cultural domination by the left. If you spoke out, you were wrong. My friends and I, we sat in silence for a couple of years, but enough was enough. In January of 2025, we said no, we put our foot down, and we started this chapter, what was meant just to be gathering a group of friends together to talk about these controversial topics, have civil discourse in our school, but it turned into something much bigger. Our whole school got involved. We were able to bring kids from two sides of the classroom, people who would never talk to each other on a day-to-day basis. They were able to have the most intellectual, complicated, but respectful conversations I've ever seen out of high school kids, more so than we see on Capitol Hill sometimes. And so it was so ridiculous, being told by teachers every day, no, you're not old enough for this. You're not allowed to have these conversations. Teachers scared of talking, yet these high school students are showing them how it's done. It has been such a blessing to lead that chapter.
Well, fortunately, there was one teacher that was willing to be a sponsor of the club, right? So you're able to do it. So there was at least one teacher that was encouraging you guys to be able to have civil dialogue.
Yes, ma'am. She is the best. We would not be here without her.
Yeah. All right. Well, this all kind of culminated in Noah being in the center of this national, it was a battle that got national attention, but it was a free speech battle because you happened to invite to speak to your club our president, Victoria Cobb, and other people, leftist groups, LGBT groups, LGBTQ, I guess you got to say groups, and even the school officials tried to shut it down, right?
This is true. I remember sitting at home one night, we made the flyer, typed 2 genders, 1 truth. Oh, what could go wrong with that?
Well, let's pause a minute there. So you invited her to speak on 2 genders, 1 truth, which was talking about biological reality,
yes,
or basically?
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah. It's that there are 2 genders, and that is the truth. That's the biological reality.
Okay.
And so we invited her to come to the school. She graciously accepted. I remember we were instantly blocked by our administration. There was no yes period. We were told, no, she's too controversial. This topic doesn't belong in schools. Meanwhile, while you have LGBTQ and the rest of the alphabet clubs sitting in their rooms talking about the exact opposite. And so we are so thankful that the Family Foundation, Founding Freedom Law Center, was able to step in and help bring Victoria Cobb to our school. But it certainly wasn't an easy battle from then on. We ran into many roadblocks, as you know.
Yeah, there was a club dedicated to these, promoting these LGBTQ issues, right, in your school. Like, that was their whole purpose. And yeah, that's really interesting. Well, when the school administration and others in the school administration tried to block you, our legal team eventually came to your defense, and they succeeded in removing obstacles. So Victoria was able to speak, and then I think at least a couple hundred students came out to hear her. Is that right?
Yes, over 200 students. They succeeded in revoking the ban on Victoria Cobb. They succeeded in defeating the restraining order that popped up 24 hours before Victoria Cobb's appearance.
Because Victoria is such a threatening, dangerous person that you need a restraining order.
You should need a restraining order, which it's my understanding that it may still be pending or out there somewhere and just sitting.
I'm not sure about that part.
Maybe not, but no, it was absolutely ridiculous. And we could not be more thankful for y'all's help. But it was really a powerful testimony, I think, to freedom of speech prevailing and truth prevailing when we have over 200 kids sitting in a room, kids who drove into school that day seeing protesters on the side of the road protesting her appearance still the day of, who were able to come, who were able to have respectful conversation. I was blown away by the substance of their questions when they sat down to ask Victoria Cobb, kids who were as far left as the spectrum goes, who were able to come and ask the most intricate, respectful questions that truthfully I didn't expect, and it proved all the adults wrong.
What kind of questions did they ask? Do you remember?
Absolutely. Look, they came up, they said, why do you believe what you believe? Can you prove it to me? And there were some kids who came up, how do I be a good mom? How do I grow up? How do I leave my family? Questions from all over the spectrum. But it was really great to see kids come up, not feisty, not argumentative, but kids who were curious, kids who actually wanted to know, why do you believe what you believe? And she responded so skillfully. She attacked it from an angle of love, not an angle of hate, something that people looking on from the outside didn't expect. We knew it all along. The kids in our school knew it all along. And that's a common theme that we've seen throughout all the years of Turning Point, is that the adults on the outsides are the one going crazy, the ones looking at it, because they don't know what Turning Point is like. They hear the headlines on CNN, but they don't know what it's like inside. And that's why the kids, they love it. Hundreds of kids show up to these meetings, and the adults don't get why.
Well, you also had some conservative congressmen come out, and over half of the school turned out to hear these conservative speakers. I mean, I think there's something like 700 kids. And this is just kind of interesting because we often see in the news, we see reports, and this is happening, like in college, young people shouting speakers down, shouting conservative speakers, even threatening violence against them. Why do you think in your high school it seemed like there was a thirst for this? I guess after so many years of just any other viewpoint being shut down, they actually maybe are curious. They're flooding in to hear this.
Right.
But what does it tell us about Gen Z that maybe we're overlooking, that more than half your school came out and wanted to hear these viewpoints?
No, you're spot on. Gen Z is the first generation since George Washington that has been worse off than our parents. We're worse off than our previous generation. We're poorer, we're more depressed, we're more anxious, suicide rates are higher. In every category, we're worse off than our parents. And so Gen Z's had enough. They're tired of it. They're ready. Let
me stop you right there because you say worse off. Now, some people might argue, you had like the Great Depression. Are you thinking more almost in a mental health kind of capacity?
Yeah, mental health. But in every spectrum, you can look at just across the generation, not one specific year or age group, but across the generation, we are worse off than our parents. And it's the first time that's ever happened since George Washington. Now, there's hope that as our generation grows up, that we can change that. There's a lot of hope. But a lot of kids, even if they don't know that statistic off the top of their head, they can feel it. Something's off, whether that's being forced to take a COVID vax or worrying about how they're going to afford college or how they're going to afford the first house. They all feel it. And so when they come into this room and they have the opportunity to talk to a congressman, the people who make these laws, the people who can help change the future of Gen Z, they are thrilled, they're excited. Now, are some there to push back? Absolutely. But I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that they're coming to ask their questions. They're not afraid to push back. I think that's good.
Why do you think in your high school so many came out to hear and ask questions instead of just trying to shut it down?
Yeah, I mean, they're curious. Some people, they wanted to shut them down. That was their goal, is to get them to get a gotcha question in there. He responded awesome to all of the questions. And so I hope...
This is John McGuire.
John McGuire, yes, ma'am. And so I hope they walked away with maybe a better understanding of how it works on Capitol Hill, maybe a better understanding of Congressman McGuire, and hopefully a better understanding of our club. Not that we're here to push an ideology and that's the end all be all. Not that we're here to be right, but that we're here to inspire conversation and to host civil discourse.
Now, did you deal with any pushback or uncomfortable dialogue or anything coming at you?
Of course, there's plenty of mean tweets, mean comments, pushback in real life. But ultimately, you grow to accept it. And almost be thankful for it. If it wasn't for the pushback, we would not be where we are today. Our school's very unique in the way that we have a great balance of conservatives and liberals where people are ready to have discourse. So if we were all conservative, it would be, no, it wouldn't be as fun. It wouldn't be as exciting to have this conversation.
In your mind, it wouldn't be as fun.
Right.
This is Western Albemarle High School, right? Okay.
Because you don't want it to be an echo chamber. That's the worst thing that can happen.
Which they were trying to force on you guys.
Yes, that's what they were trying to force, and that's what it used to be.
And they still are. They're still trying to force that, because after this, they put some more regulations in that make it really hard to have future conservative guest speakers. Well, Noah, you could have been just a student that decides to just walk away from this. It's not worth the trouble. After getting shut down, you're not going to try to fight through it. What made you want to persevere and really keep sticking your neck out there?
This is going to be an unexpected answer. It wasn't all the conservatives, although that was very encouraging to see the turnout, but it was the liberals that would come up to me in the hallway. They'd whisper, "I'm a liberal, but I love what you're doing. I am a Democrat. I love what you're doing. Thank you for inspiring civil discourse." And here's my favorite quote, and I talk about this a lot. It was in the very first article ever written about our club, and there's a quote, the main featured quote. It was from a liberal student who came to all of our meetings. He asked really tough questions, but he was very fair. And he said, "I disagree with everything this club preaches, but the most important thing you can do as a citizen is inspire civil discussion." And that's exactly what we did. And it was inspiring to see these people who on the media reflected as they hate Turning Point. They would never go to a Turning Point meeting. Turning Point is terrible. But in real life, they come to these meetings, they're excited to ask questions, they're excited to talk to you. And that's what kept me going, knowing that in real life, things aren't as polarized, they aren't as crazy as it seems on social media. It's really just a bunch of humans who want to talk, who want to figure out the best path forward for America. That's what's so encouraging to me. That
is encouraging, that Gen Z would be more willing to have this kind of dialogue than is projected out there on social media, so I think there are some that want to shut things down, but in our real life communities, there's a lot more that actually want to talk things out, or at least hear a different side.
Right. Yeah, and you'll never see that on social media, unfortunately, because on social media hates truth. People don't make money off of truth on social media. People make money off of controversy. People make money off of lies. And so when you look at Turning Point and so many organizations like it, the truth is rarely reflected in the public forum. Oftentimes, it's things that will spark controversy and that will spark negative discourse. And so it's hurtful, but especially to the hundreds of students that come to these meetings with good intentions, to be portrayed in such a negative light everywhere else.
Well, what do you think the turnout in your club, in the Turning Point Club in Albemarle County, should tell older adults maybe what they're missing, what they might be missing about Gen Z?
Gen Z's ready. We are ready to fight. I think that's one of the reasons that Turning Point has been so successful. There's been hundreds of conservative organizations, so why was Turning Point the one that was successful? Well, for the first time, my generation wasn't looked at like numbers on a screen or votes in a ballot box, but as the future of America. Charlie Kirk put his faith in our generation. He said, "All right, I'm handing you the key to the future. Let's see how you use it." And we showed up. We showed up in numbers. We have over 5,000 chapters across the United States. And so I think this proves, at least to me and millions of Americans out there, that Gen Z is ready. We are ready to take over. It was ridiculous to see in the 2024 election a 21 percentage point shift to the right in Gen Z voters. That is so encouraging to me. That shows me that not only are we ready, but we're ready to do the right thing. It's been so cool to see that shift in Gen Z when the media is telling us the exact opposite.
Well, the data does back up what you're saying. We're just going to put a couple of images on the screen here for our YouTube viewers. But what else do you think that the older generations are missing about Gen Z, or maybe don't understand?
Gen Z is feisty. Absolutely. There's a lot of discourse for sure. But look, truly, Gen Z is really the future of America. I know it's hard to believe when you look down and these kids are just learning to drive. They're just turning 18. They're just graduating high school. And so here's how I like to think about it. And this is what my friend Brian Hollihan told me. He said, it's like a church. Right now in a church, the elders run the church. The elders lead the church. But there's a youth group in that church. Right now in America, we have a very strong youth group. And ultimately, when the elders leave the church, when the elders go away, the youth group is going to inherit the church. And if that youth group is not ready, the church is going to fall. It's the exact same thing right now in America. Right now, Gen Z is ready. We are the youth group. We are getting ready to inherit America, and we're prepared. And so it's going to be really cool to see how our generation is able to affect public discourse, public policy, and really just the future of our country.
And we're seeing signs of that renewal, but it's coming in the midst of some really hard cultural pressures. And, in our previous podcast, we talked about that Gen Z is being labeled a lot of times as one of the loneliest, most isolated generations that we've seen in a long time. How have you seen things like the hookup culture, for instance, playing into that?
This is so true. You identified the number one culprit. It's social media and hookup culture, absolutely. No, hookup culture is absolutely detrimental to the mental health of Gen Z. What I've noticed in my own life with my friends is that the more girls you get with, the more people you hook up with, the more you get involved in that kind of arena, the lonelier you become. I see people who are going on with their girlfriend of 3-4 years happier than someone who had 5 girlfriends in 1 year. They may look more cool or hip, or they're so much more awesome on the outside for getting all these girls and having so much fun, but it's a person who's quieter, who goes to the gym when they wake up, who reads their Bible, who hangs out with a few core friends, who loves his girlfriend, who loves his wife, that's always happier. And I think the devil is really trying to get a grip hold on Gen Z through this. I think through media, through podcasts like I saw you discuss, Call Her Daddy, it's pushed. It's pushed every day. This hookup culture is pushed every single day on young Gen Z, and it's enticing. Take it from me, it really is enticing, and it's hard when everyone around you is doing the same thing, not to get involved, not to follow their example, but I can't say that they're truly happy.
In the context of what we're talking about, both with young adults being willing to question and listen to different viewpoints, maybe even grow more conservative, and also the things that are enticing them, what are the things that older generations need to understand, or maybe are misunderstanding about Gen Z?
Yeah, I mean, Gen Z really is unique, I'd say, in the way that they have had a unique experience growing up with the COVID vaccine, going through COVID, all these experiences being pushed on them, that I'd say they'd be shaped in a way where it's kind of difficult for them to just accept authority, to listen to authority, whether that's coming from the government, whether that's sometimes, like it is with all kids, coming from parents. And so what Gen Z, I think, is going to need, obviously the older generations will help, but I think Gen Z is going to need a revival amongst themselves. I think they're going to need to get it together amongst themselves and have kids their age step up and take the lead. I think it's going to be a lot more enticing to them when they see other Gen Zers stepping up and taking the lead and listening to them. We've been told our whole lives and shown our whole lives that the government can't be trusted, and it's been difficult. And so what I'm praying for every day is truly a revival amongst Gen Z. One of the things that high school girls are really good at, I've noticed, is shaming their friends. It's very easy to shame your friends, but I think that tool can be used for good. I think it can be used to shame your friends when they go and they hook up with girls. Say, no, go read your Bible. No, go on a date. Be loyal. And so I think that shaming culture, and this is what Charlie Kirk touched on in his very last speech ever at CLS, is that shaming culture can be used for good, not to shame them into peer pressure and doing bad things, but to say, no, knock it off. Stop hooking up with people. Get off your phone. Go outside. Go to the gym. And so I think it's going to take a spark from inside of Gen Z to save our generation.
Okay. Now, you bring up Charlie Kirk, and it's interesting because we've also seen that there's been a lot of younger people turning back to faith, going to church, reading their Bible more. Do you think that is an outcome of trying to reach for more social connection after feeling isolated? Is it Charlie Kirk's influence, or all of the above? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a mix of both, absolutely. I think people have been hungry their whole lives. There's something in their heart that's not filled. Social media hasn't filled it as much as we try. And I think Charlie Kirk's death, his assassination, was kind of a wake-up call for when people said, okay, he's told me his whole entire life that this hole in my heart can't be filled by social media. It can't be filled by girls. Maybe he's right. And so people, in honor of Charlie, started going to church. They started praying. They started getting right with God. And we've seen people stick. We've seen people, an input of people into church. We've seen thousands of Gen Zs give their life to Christ, and it's been so encouraging, and they realize he's right. A lot of these people tried it out. Charlie Kirk died. It's in memory of Charlie. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to get off my phone. But then they see, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm feeling better. Oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm not so lonely. Charlie was right. And so it's been incredible to see. I know in my church personally, our pews are packed. I have never seen more kids here than I have in my life. I've never seen more kids in youth group than I have in my life. And it was almost immediately. And so it's so powerful to see that.
Do you think that'll stick, or is it just a passing trend, or do you think
I hope so. I hope it will stick, and that remains to be seen. But what I have noticed after Charlie's death, we had a moment of unity, a brief moment of unity. But I feel like that moment of unity is starting to waver, and so we need to do the best we can to preserve it. Right now, there's a lot of division in the Conservative Party, a lot of division over Charlie's death, unfortunately. And so we really need to make sure that this moment of unity, this moment of kids going back to church, this moment of kids getting involved, that it stays, that it sticks.
So along those lines, what can older adults do to really help people like you, your generation, rediscover how to socially connect, outside of the phone, to help them build those community connections, those social connections, and also to encourage them in getting back in the faith? What are some practical ways that older generations can help?
Well, first off, parents, get off your phones around your kids. I've seen this time and time again. Kids are sitting at the dinner table trying to talk to their parents, and their parents are on their phones. Their parents are texting. And so ultimately, it's going to set the example. And so kids, when they grow up, they're going to do the same exact thing. They're going to be on their phones. They learn from their parents, and it's heartbreaking to see. Personally, I didn't have a phone until high school. I got, made fun of by my friends for that, of course. But looking back, I don't regret it. I would do the same thing again if I could.
Were there times you were mad at your parents, though?
Oh, my gosh, of course. And that's natural. Every kid's going to be mad at their parents because they don't have the phone, they don't have the iPad. But seriously, I think that's one of the most powerful things that parents can do is keep their kids away from social media, keep their kids away from devices until they're old enough. On the faith side, dads need to go to church. It is 10 times more likely that a child will take the faith more seriously if the dad is the one that takes them to church. Moms, of course, go to church. Of course, take your kids to church. But dads need to go as well. So many times you'll see a mom start taking their kids to church when the dad's at home, the dad's playing video games, the dad stayed out late. The kids respect their dad, at least in that way, a lot more. They're more likely to take after the faith when the husband is the one that takes the kids to church. And so it's crucial that the parents get the kids involved in the faith early, but also that they don't force it on them. I've seen a lot of times with my friends, the one that walk away from the faith are the ones who had it forced on them. Pastors' kids are more likely to leave the faith than your average Christian. That was an insane statistic when I learned that, but it makes sense. They're going to stumble, they're going to fall, they're going to waver in their faith. But parents holding a strong example is the most crucial thing. And across the board, older generations holding a strong example to Gen Z, saying, no, this is how we're going to lead. And I think Gen Zs are going to notice that. I think Gen Zs will look up to that.
So they want to see authentic faith.
Absolutely.
They have a lot to mistrust and want to see something they can really believe in. And that's going to help us modeling these things. So what I've heard you say is, we've dealt with the isolation that's unprecedented that Gen Z is facing because of social media, the COVID they went through, the mistrust of government. Is there any other couple things that maybe you want to point out? Maybe if we were going to talk about the top 3 things that people should know about Gen Z that they're missing?
Right. Look, right now, especially in the education side, Gen Z is struggling under the grasp that indoctrination has on them.
Yeah.
I've experienced this going to a private Christian school and a public school, the stark contrast in the content of our education. I saw a funny video early today making fun of kind of when kids graduate high school, the main 2 events they know are the Holocaust and slavery. And unfortunately, that's kind of true.
Let's just point out that it's really good to know we should know about the Holocaust and slavery because we tend to repeat the mistakes we make in history if we don't know about them.
Absolutely.
But you're saying they're excluding other wonderful things about the Founding Fathers, why the First Amendment is important, why religious freedom is important.
You're 100% correct.
Tell me about how you experience indoctrination firsthand in your school. I'd love to hear this.
Yes. The first thing that comes to mind was my sophomore year history class, AP World History. We open up our textbooks, and the rest of the kids start flipping to page 5 where the teacher told us to open to. I ended up accidentally on the very first page. And as I was reading through the foreword, what I noticed was this was not an ordinary history book. But they made sure to point out in the foreword that this history book was written by Muslims from an Islamic perspective. And so their goal of this history book was to tell history through the Islamic eye. And so as you went through, you would see little hints of this. The narratives were not as positive as you'd expect. It was more looking at history through a negative eye, more criticizing American history, more criticizing the mistakes the Founding Fathers made than focusing on the great values, the great culture, and the great victories that brought America where it was today. But it was criticizing the Founding Fathers. It was criticizing American culture. And it was subtle, but it was there. And it was concerning to see that no one was talking about this and nobody noticed. And it makes me wonder, how often is that going on in other high schools? How often is it going on in other classes?
That is incredible that they have a textbook in your. It was your, I think you had mentioned to me, your AP course.
AP class,
yeah,
exactly.
Is this history?
AP World History.
That is nuts. And it says right there in the front page.
Right there on the front page.
Oh, this is through an Islamic lens.
Right.
I mean, what else did you see as far as indoctrination?
It's with teachers, whether it's in English essays. I was talking to my friend the other day before I came here because I wanted to get his perspective on this and see what he had experienced. He told me about some essays he had written. If it was on anything through a conservative lens, I don't remember the exact topics, but his teacher, instead of writing notes on, restructure this sentence, you spelled this word wrong, would have different notes in the margins. Margins arguing against his thesis. Margins where she argued against his points, not instructing him how to write better, not instructing him for his grammar, not correcting him on his writing technique, but correcting him on his points, correcting him on his argument, saying, well, hold on, you're wrong. I don't believe what you said, so this paper is bad. Fail.
Because he was arguing a conservative
viewpoint?
Because
he's arguing a conservative point. Okay. We see that a lot in college as well, but seeing it in high school is so disheartening.
What about the LGBTQ indoctrination? Because this is the county where they had elementary school students doing an alphabet, that had T for transgender and that kind of a thing. So how did you see that in your high school?
No, there absolutely is. There's this really strong double standard, is what I noticed in the LGBTQ clubs. I have some friends who, in the spirit of civil discourse, were hoping to go to one of these clubs and attend it and just hear what they had to say. But they said no. They said, you can't come in because you're not part of the LGBTQ community. A few weeks later, when our club tried to host Victoria Cobb, they said, no, she can't come. She's too divisive. Clubs have to be open-minded. Clubs have to be loving to everybody. So Victoria Cobb can't come. And obviously, Victoria is loving to everybody. But on the flip side, this LGBTQ club, they were not loving to everybody. They would not let people in who had a differing viewpoint. And unfortunately, that's the way it is that they're labeled as a protective class in our school. And so...
But was this also incorporated in some of your classes?
Of course it is. You have massive pride flags that are bigger than American flags in some of our classrooms, which is really disheartening to see. We started a campaign, and you'll find this interesting, our very first year of Turning Point, to get a large American flag in every classroom with the goal of having the American flag be the centerpiece of the classroom. And it worked in a lot of classrooms, which was great to see. But we also tried to put pro-life flags in different classrooms. Ms. Karpovich has one in her classroom. We tried to do that as well.
This was your club sponsor?
Yes.
Yeah.
They said no. They said pro-life flags were too political, so we cannot have them in our classrooms. Meanwhile, you have LGBTQ flags hanging in every other classroom. That was really scary to see.
Yeah. Is it still like that for the most part?
It is.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the pro-life issues, I did want to touch on abortion because that is one of the largest battles, maybe even the largest battle that we're facing on a moral issue in this state. Leading up to November, the battle to defeat an amendment to enshrine unlimited abortion into our Constitution. So I wanted to ask you, help us understand, how does Gen Z think and talk about the abortion issue?
Unfortunately, Gen Z does not have the best lens on the issue. And I don't blame the kids. I blame social media. I blame pop culture. How it's been for the last few years in Gen Z, and this is one of their biggest holdups, is they've been fed all sorts of dehumanizing language, like it's just a clump of cells, it's just a fetus, in order to justify killing an unborn baby. And unfortunately, that's all they've heard, that's all they've been fed, and so they believe it. Those words that are just kind of just slogans, just buzzwords to justify it, have started to become truth and have started to become reality for it. And it's ironic to see the same people who were okay with COVID vaccines being pushed on everyone, who were okay with losing their job over not taking a vaccine, all of a sudden start taking up the my body, my choice argument. And so it's been really disheartening to see. Thank God we've had some big victories like Roe v. Wade being overturned. And Gen Z has some big shoes to follow. I think the number one thing to help Gen Z kind of wake up is just looking at the example of older generations. Older generations like you have done a great job at this.
Let me ask you, so when your friends, you feel that they actually don't believe it's a human being in the womb at this point? Excuse me.
That's sure what it sounds like.
I have a bit of a cold, but in the womb, yeah.
No, exactly. They have in their mind that it is just a clump of cells, but we all are a clump of cells. The
so
baby in the womb,
your friends
and you and
think
me.
that it's just a clump of cells in the womb. But how about when they see ultrasounds and, they're celebrating the birth of a sibling or something? Is there a disconnect there?
It's ironic, and that's absolutely something to point out. mothers are so many times more likely to keep the baby once they've heard the heartbeat. Yet I don't see people kind of accepting this. I see them going to a baby shower, celebrating a baby, bringing gifts to the baby, patting the baby. Oh my gosh, he's so cute. I can't wait to meet him. And then they turn around and say, no, it's okay to kill it. It's ridiculous how much love they can show, how much compassion they can show, yet just flip the script instantly and say, no, it's a clump of cells. No, it doesn't deserve life. It's really disheartening to see.
Well, since we're talking a little bit about the pro-life issue here, I did just want to get your thoughts real quick on how people your age are thinking about abortion, especially when we are facing one of the greatest battles in our lifetime in this state over the amendment to enshrine unlimited abortion in the Constitution. And I want to hear from you. How are people thinking about this issue when you hear them talking, that aren't necessarily from a Christian worldview? And how can we help, equip them? Let's just start with the first part of that question. How do people your age talk about abortion? How are they perceiving it?
Well, it's all about bodily autonomy. They want complete control over their body. They want complete control over the separate human that is inside of them. And it's really disheartening to see them use all the dehumanizing language, clump of cells, a fetus, in order to justify that. And it's so drilled into their head by social media, by pop culture, that they start to believe it's true, that there's not a living human inside of them, that a fetus doesn't mean baby in Latin, that it is just a clump of cells, like we all aren't clumps of cells. It's been drilled into their brains, and it's starting to become a reality for them, and it's really scary to see.
And interestingly, their background with COVID, that self-autonomy really resonates with them, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, it's so ironic to see them being completely fine with shots being pushed on people, unresearched vaccines being pushed on people, people being fired from their jobs for not taking a shot mandated by the government. And then they turn around and say, no, it's my body, my choice. Where was that during COVID? But it's their slogan. That is their number one slogan. It's completely ironic.
So when we're trying to reach young people with a message on life, what do you think we should keep in mind?
Absolutely. Life is precious. Life is holy. Life is from the Lord. It gets a lot easier from a Christian perspective. And so I think pastors need to start speaking out more. I've never once heard abortion talked about from my pulpit at my home church. And so seriously, look, Christians need to get a lot more involved in these issues. I think
what's gonna resonate with them to really click in their minds? This is a human life that deserves protection, and we need to protect women's safety. What's going to resonate with people your age?
Absolutely. I think what really is going to resonate as Gen Z starts to get to the age, and a lot of them are, where they're starting to have their own families. They're starting to get married. They're starting to have their own babies. And so making that as possible to as Gen Z, making it possible to afford a kid, and making it possible to afford a home, so they start to have these children, because I find it gets increasingly harder after a woman has gone through pregnancy and had a baby to argue against abortion, to say, no, it is just a clump of cells, because they're holding their clump of cells in their arms and they love their clump of cells.
Well, Noah, what gives you hope as we wrap up here? What gives you hope for your generation?
People like the Family Foundation, people like you hosting the Speak Up podcast, people who are going out, who are doing the hard work. We're sitting in our classroom and we're helping there, but you guys are the ones who are going out, who are knocking on doors, who are pushing to stop the abortion amendment that's coming up on the ballot very soon. But what gives me a lot of hope as well is Gen Z, is my generation, coming into a school where political culture was taboo, and in under a year being able to take that negative stigma around civil discussion and change it to one where people from all over the political spectrum can come together and talk. Happening in a year after decades of that absence is amazing, and that's what gives me hope. If we can do it in a year, we can do it in America very soon.
What is your future plans? I know you're going to Liberty, right?
Yes, ma'am. I'll be at Liberty next year, majoring in politics and policy, and hopefully getting involved with the Turning Point chapter there.
We are going to see Noah in a few years out in the political sphere. Maybe you'll be president. Who knows? Or senator, something.
Who knows?
That would be cool. We'll vote for you. I want to wrap up just with one more question for you.
Yes,
Last one. If you could tell everyone listening, parents, grandparents, whoever it is, one thing they should know about Gen Z moving forward, what would it be?
We are ready. We have been waiting. We've been on the bench for years. I've seen it firsthand at my school. Gen Z is ready. We are talking. They are ready to get into the arena, so trust them. They are the key to the future of America. Charlie realized that, and that's why Turning Point has been booming. And so put faith in Gen Z. Let them do their thing. It's going to be a good time.
Well, if you want to help the Family Foundation equip and support students like Noah here and just really embolden more people to rise up, more young people to feel confident in their beliefs, in their Christian worldview, check out some of the programs we have at Family Foundation. Just go to familyfoundation.org. That's familyfoundation.org. Go to the Get Involved section at the top of our website, and you'll see that we have an Equip intern program, which is actually going on right now. We've got students going through a worldview training right now. I've got interns working with me in grassroots and communications. And then in the spring, during the General Assembly season, we have pages that come and work with us as well. So check all that out. Again, it's familyfoundation.org. Thanks for joining us. Remember, we are stronger when we speak together, and we'll see you next time.